Hey everyone, it is time for a crayfish breeding operation update, and today we're going to be talking about the white spector crayfish. So, they have finally been moved, well most of them, from the 10-gallon tank with a sponge filter over to the 55-gallon tank. This used to be the tank where I had wild fish, but that has been successfully converted over to what you see now, which has nice black sand, which can very easily contrast with the white spector crayfish, making it perfect. Now, before I did any major changes, I had a powerful UV filter in this tank for a few weeks because I wanted to make sure I killed any pathogens that might be in the water due to the wild fish that were previously in here. Thankfully, it seems like everything's good. I had a trial with a few of these crayfish in here for a few days, just to make sure they'd be okay, and I learned a few things along the way doing that have been rectified, and we'll be going over some of that here. So, the water is nice and clean. We still got some algae, but I'm going to get some more autosinkless catfish, who love to num all over the algae. And they'll take care of the algae for me. In the wild tank, I didn't have much other than the central stone rollers to do that, because, the wild tank is only fish that I catch, and I wanted to keep it that way, but this is a little different. So, one of the first things is the intake. So, the intake's got a grate that's it's moderately wide, so small particles and some of the smaller crayfish here could possibly have gotten sucked in. So what I've done is taken a fine mesh media bag that's got a little zipper over the top, and I put it over the intake, so now no one is getting sucked up into that. Now, none of the crayfish got sucked up into there, but hey, better safe than sorry. Plus, on top of that, there is 1,000,001 uses for a fine mesh media bag. For real, you can use these things from everything from cooking to aquarium stuff, like for real. Now, I wouldn't mix the two, but if it's brand new, there's some interesting things you could do with these fine mesh media bags, and yeah, they've got a lot of uses if you're creative about it. One of the main things I dealt with though is the water flow rate. The 10-gallon tank has a sponge filter. That's not a ton of water flow, enough to be filtering, but it's not a lot of water flow. This is a Penplax Cascade 1500. That produces about 350 gallon per hour water flow. Now, I don't use spray bars on my tanks normally because I like the water to flow freely from the left to the right, or vice versa, without any restriction, and I find that spray bars get clogged very easily, and if you don't have a spray bar, then it's more reliable, yada yada. But in this case, it was a big problem. You see, the water flow was so intense, at least for these baby crayfish, that as soon as they put them in, they were struggling just to get their footing. They were being swept all the way to the right because, excuse me, because they couldn't handle the water flow. It was way too fast. So I started thinking, well, what can I do to fix this problem? The first thing I thought of is, well, I could restrict the outlet valve by turning it over a little bit, but that might not be good for the filter. So I did a little research, and it turns out the best solution is actually a spray bar. The more length and holes you have in the spray bar, the less impactful the water is. It's basically distributing the water flow. Instead of having like a super good fine flow, now it's distributed, and as you can see now, they don't have a problem walking around at all anymore. So that problem has been rectified, thankfully. I will use the spray bar if it means these little guys can walk around happily and not have to struggle to go back and forth. So, that's good. Now then, another thing. Right, you can see them. There's still a little bit of water flow, but they can handle it at this point. But anywho, another thing. This tank now has the original sand that came from it. Now, this is important because a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, but a few months ago, I got this tank the filter, the lights, everything, from a friend who was done with the aquarium hobby. He didn't want to continue. So I had to refurbish everything. So that was a lot of work. But the one thing I didn't have was the original sand he used. Now, what I did is I took that original sand, because he actually kept it. We found it in a bucket. And basically we recycled it. But no, I did not just put the sand in here. What's important to do with recycled sand, is what I call it, is put it in a pot and boil the ever-loving crap out of it to kill any pathogens, anything that might be in there, etc. Make it sanitary. And then on top of that, I have to use something like this as a sifter and collect any of the undesirable stuff that isn't sand to make sure it doesn't go in the tank. Now on top of this, because there was a lot of dead creatures in his tank before he gave everything to me, the sand probably has a lot of residual gunk that has ammonia or ammonia producing stuff in it. So I had to let the tank sit just empty for a number of days, and I had to swish the sand, get all the detritus out, or at least most of it. There's got to be a lot of detritus with recycled sand, so that's why the sand doesn't look perfect and pristine. It's got a lot of brown detritus everywhere, so that's just going to take time to vacuum out. But because this filter is literally almost all biomedia, and there is a ton of biomedia, it's filtered out ammonia over to nitrate super, super quick after the few days. And after my trial with 2 little crayfish in here by themselves, they seem to be doing A-OK, so I decided to start migrating them over. Now then, recycled sand takes a while to get all the ammonia out, because it's just kind of one of those things where you pack it in, you put it in a bucket. It's in this bucket right here, and it's still gonna be releasing ammonia, but I'm just gonna keep up with the water changes, keep testing every day, make sure everything's okay. Once everything stables out fully, I shouldn't have to worry, but everything is at a level where it's completely safe for these guys. I just want to be careful and keep monitoring in case something crazy goes on. But I don't expect anything crazy to go on. These guys seem happy. And now that they got more room to move around, a lot more room than the 10-gallon, they're able to explore. But that also makes feeding time a little more difficult, because now I have to disperse the food all the way across here, because, you know, if I put food just over here, they're not all going to come over to this side. If I put it over there, they're not all going to come over to that side. So it's a bit tricky making sure everyone gets fed. But so far, so good. And I'm happy that the 55 is now set up. Now, thankfully, it was already cycled beforehand, you know, thanks to the big filter here. So switching everything over wasn't that big of a deal. I've still got the old substrate, and the other fish are elsewhere now. And, yeah. Now they can grow without having to attack each other for space, because there are a few crayfish here that are missing some claws. And, like, for instance, I think right there, that little guy's missing a claw. Some of them are missing 2 claws, because they were starting to get agitated with each other because of the lack of space. I needed to rectify that, and I needed to do it quick. I couldn't set up another tank and wait a month for cycling, so I had to repurpose the wild fish tank. But thankfully, everything is A-OK. That big UV filter I had in here for a number of weeks did a great job at sterilizing the tank. You know, with wild fish, you never know what you're bringing into your tank from the wild, so the UV filter certainly killed any fungi or pest algae that comes from the wild, and viruses, etc., which is the nice thing about UV filters, you know. For wild tanks, they're a necessity. But that being said, the crayfish now have more room to scuttle about, and now they can grow up, which is great. So hopefully we'll be seeing them get full size and, doing crayfishy things. So, that being said, that is the big update for these guys. Woo! They're on their way.